Now, the Greens have launched an official complaint against the anti-wind power lobby group, the Waubra Foundation. The party's health spokesman, Senator Richard Di Natale, has written to both the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profits Commissioner and the Australian Tax Office. Why? The Waubra Foundation is registered as a health promotion charity. Now, Senator Di Natale says that's misleading and has led to the group receiving public subsidies. Sarah Laurie is CEO of the Waubra Foundation, and she's on the line now. Sarah, welcome.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Now, health promotion charities can receive tax-deductible donations. Was that a motivation for the foundation seeking that classification?
Look, it was difficult to work out which particular classification best fitted the work of the foundation. We are concerned about environmental noise pollution and what it's doing to people. Just want to correct something that is misleading. We are not an anti-wind farm organisation. We are pro-health and concerned about the lack of research into the adverse health effects of environmental noise. Wind turbines are just one source. We help people who are impacted by noise from CSG, field compressors, from gas-fired power stations, from coal mining, and a range of other sources, predominantly in rural areas, but there are some city sources as well. And so, you know, we're concerned about making sure that the noise pollution regulation happens appropriately and that there's research into the adverse health impacts of the lower frequencies because of the lack of information about the actual doses that people are receiving and the impacts on people.
There's a lot of research, is there not, Sarah Laurie, which discounts, in particular in the case of wind farms, the veracity of those claims of adverse health effects. In fact, the most recent Australian work would suggest that it's the presence of groups like your own that leads to most of the health effects rather than the wind farms themselves. It's almost psychosomatic.
Well, look, I think you need to look at what the researchers actually did in that particular research paper. I think you're talking about the one that Professor Chapman has just had published. Professor Chapman didn't actually go and speak with the residents or with their treating health practitioners. He went to the noise polluters and asked them for their complaints data. And within the noise polluters sort of fraternity, whether you're a resident impacted by noise from coal seam gas or wind turbines or gas-fired power stations, it's pretty unanimous to hear from the residents that the noise polluters under-record the complaints. So we don't think that's a credible way of actually assessing the population noise impact or the individual noise impact either. And the sort of data that we're seeing come in both from overseas and also in Australia suggests that there's a significant problem, particularly with respect to sleep. And that shouldn't come as any surprise because we know that nighttime noise is going to affect, people's sleep if the noise is loud enough. And in country areas where there's a very quiet background noise, additional noise is disturbing people. And that's, we think, one of the main drivers of the ill health that we're seeing.
Well, it's a pretty vexed and contentious area, Sarah Laurie. Let's get back to this issue of tax deductibility and your classification. I mean, this, as you say yourself, you were torn about which way to jump there, but the fact that you have jumped towards presenting yourself as a health promotion charity does get you that tax concession. I mean, that's the critical area here. I mean, how do you justify that claim of working purely as a health promotion charity and not as a lobbyist group against the sort of issues you just raised?
Well, I mean, what we do is both collect information directly from residents who are saying they're impacted by the noise. We collect the research data that is being put out by others. We liaise with acousticians and health practitioners and researchers around the world. We're making quite significant progress in terms of increasing the understanding about what the noise impacts are and what is driving the deterioration in people's health. And there's some really exciting work that's being done by some independent acousticians in Australia, particularly some work that was presented a couple of weeks ago in the Cherry Tree Tribunal by an independent acoustician called Les Hewson. So, look, there's a need for the data collection. Unfortunately, the research that was recommended by the Senate inquiry 2.5 years ago that Green Senator Rachel Seward actually chaired, none of that research has happened, and it's a shame because data is going to be what helps sort out what is actually happening and what appropriate noise pollution regulation parameters we need to ensure are being met.
But all this work is entirely legitimate and entirely reasonable to undertake and strength to your arm, but should it be tax deductible? That's the critical issue. Is it in fact health promotion or is it research and lobbying? And neither of those would be tax deductible, whereas health promotion is. This is the crux of the issue, isn't it?
Well, I guess what we're doing is providing information to the community and to members of the community who are in positions of responsibility as well. Look, I should add, Jonathan, we were actually investigated a couple of months ago by the Australian Tax Office for precisely the same reasons. The Tax Office gave us, they went through things very carefully and gave us a clean bill of health that I believe was in July this year. So, look, there are many people, as you can understand, particularly the noise polluters, who don't really want us to be doing what we're doing because it's going to mean that there are potentially increased regulations that they have to follow.
Well, they raise issues of conflict of interest with the Waubra Foundation as well. Your founder, Peter Mitchell, has been director of several oil and gas companies. There's obviously a potential conflict of interest there.
Yeah, look, there is a potential. However, Peter Mitchell has always, from the beginning, from the establishment of the foundation, acknowledged and expected that we would be investigating problems from noise sources other than wind turbines. And that was explicitly stated in the objectives that he wrote before I joined the foundation. And whenever there's been a request for help from somebody or a community impacted by coal mining noise or CSG noise up in Tara or gas-fired power station noise at Uranquinty and Port Campbell in Victoria, there has always been not only the expectation but full support from the board and in particular Mr Mitchell that we should investigate and support those people and make sure that the noise pollution data is collected if we can possibly help with that. So, yes, there's a potential conflict of interest, but I've personally found Mr Mitchell to be of the utmost integrity it has never been an issue.
Just finally,
what I find concerning is that when we talk to these people, some of them have told us that they've tried to bring up the noise pollution issue with the public health people, the doctors for the environment, the health departments, and also with the Greens, and they've all been poo-pooed or dismissed. I think if we're talking about transparency and we're talking about conflicts of interest, one of the concerns I've got is that the Greens chose to vote against a proper investigation of the renewable energy certificate fraud issue at the Waubra wind development. That was on the 14th of March this year in federal parliament. They voted with the government not to investigate the fraud, and we're extremely concerned about that because, Waubra alone has collected $80 million in renewable energy certificates, yet it has never been compliant. We suspect that that's actually the tip of the iceberg. Now, we stumbled across this issue because we were predominantly concerned with the issue of low-frequency noise, infrasound and vibration and its effects on health. We didn't realise that there were these issues or concerns that some of the existing wind developments were not actually compliant with the existing noise pollution regulations that do not include infrasound and low-frequency noise. But we're finding that, in fact, there does appear to be some major discrepancies, and the Clean Energy Regulator does not actually investigate whether or not these wind developers are telling the truth.
We'll leave that there, Sarah, because we've got Richard Di Natale waiting, and we'll put some of these things to him. Thanks for your time this evening. Sarah Laurie, she's CEO of the Waubra Foundation.